although John couldn't make it, it was great that he was able to do that. I know that took a little bit of time out of his very busy schedule, and I'm very appreciative of that. So we're going to go ahead and move on and try to get back on track. We're going to be pretty close. I promise there will be lunch. Don't worry. The guy that's in charge of this thing didn't screw that part of it up. So we'll make sure we try to get back on track and get some food and beverages in here as well here in just a little bit. So this next segment, we've actually got 3 of these segments coming up. We originally had 6, and there have been some issues just getting here with a couple of our partners. The purpose of this next session and the couple others that we're going to have throughout tomorrow is to integrate more our business partners, our resellers, into the presentation. And a lot of folks say, well, why do you want to do that? And a lot of my guys said, why do you want to do that? Because you can't control the message. Well, that's what this is about. The perspectives that you're going to hear from these individuals, these gentlemen that come up over the next couple of days, is very, very different from ours. And the first one we have is Bain from DCR. He's based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and he's the head of grocery retail support there. Now, Alan is one of those guys. He's just one of those guys that you'll never forget once you meet him. Great guy, very, very knowledgeable. He's worked in the grocery business. In fact, owned a grocery store. So his perspective matters. Does it matter he works with a reseller now? No, he used to own the store. And the store that he owned, he bought SMS and he deployed it to his team. So he's got an excellent idea of what the product can do for guys just like you in the retail business and guys in the reseller business, and how SMS can help everybody in the community grow and be more profitable together. He's known, or at least I know him as, I may be the only guy that knows him as that, but he's known as the evangelist of the product. And when he gets up here, you'll see why. The last thing he wanted me to tell you was, he's one of those guys that's been able to check off some things on his bucket list. And once Alan gets up here, you can see he shops in the Husky section, kind of like I do. He's going to tell you maybe a little bit about his parachute story, and if he does, you just got to remember, a parachute stopped this guy that's about to come up. It's pretty fascinating. So without further ado, I want to introduce Alan Bain with David Cash Register out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, first of all, thank you to Jamie and Bain, Vaughn, for allowing us to show some of the stuff that we do out in the field. Now, as Jamie said, I grew up in the grocery business and I spent 30 years as an owner-operator, so I do have a unique perspective on how the grocery store works, some of the struggles that the grocery people go through, and until you've gone up against Walmart, Supercenter, then you really don't know what struggle is. So these independents are out there, and they're really struggling against some of these chains. And the SMS software is the tools that these guys need in order to compete. The chains have deep pockets, and they can spend millions of dollars to get this program going, this loyalty program going. They can look at all of their gross profits, and they can do all of this because they have the money. SMS is designed for the independent, and what it allows the independent to do is to compete directly with those chains. Now, what I want to do is focus on a couple of the tools that we use in our dealership. And what we're seeing is, we are not just a POS dealer anymore. Our role is evolving, it's changing. These independents are coming to us, asking for some kind of solution to compete with these chains. And I think the presentation that Stefan had today gives us more tools that we can use to compete with those chains. So we're finding ourselves more in a consulting role versus just, here's the front end, go in and sell it, get out, go to the next one. The program is a sophisticated program, has a lot of tools, requires education, and that's where we're finding ourselves. Being able to manage the product coming in the back door, all the way through the system, out the front door, and generate the reports. So, part of what I want to work on is plan your work and work your plan. As I go out and do demos and presentations and talk to retailers in the field, one of the questions that I always ask them is, do you track add markdown? Do you keep up with your markdown? And you'll be surprised at some of the answers that I get. One of them said, what is markdown? Well, that's scary. So SMS has been able to do the markdown, put it into reports, and then give us those reports so that we can plan our work and work our plan. Because the markdown is the key to being able to be profitable in the grocery store. So what do we want to look at very quickly is to go through here and see. I'm heavy, okay? Somebody needs to bolt that down. So, types of gross profit in the store. We all know what the going in gross is, okay? That's your bill out gross that comes in on your invoice from your warehouse, from your DSD vendors, and we look at that number and we say, okay, that's my going in gross. We all know what inventory gross is. That's the gross that we calculate when we do our inventory at the end of the period. Typically that is a 13-week period. Sometimes it's 6 months, and heaven forbid if they only count inventory once a year. Okay, but I want to introduce another gross that we see in SMS that I have really come to appreciate, and that is the selling gross. You see, SMS has this one database architecture, so that the database on the back office and the database at the terminals is the same thing. So when I enter a cost into a system, it gets transferred to the front end. Now, I have a whole new level. I can determine what the cost of the product was at the time I sell it. I can also determine what the markdown is at the time that I sell it. Guys, that is huge. When we're talking to the retailer and he's asking us, how can I improve my profit? How can I improve my gross? This is how we do it. Then I have another one that I call calculated gross. And what that is when we do our selling gross, the first thing that I hear back is, well, what about my spoilage? What about my loss? What about other losses in the system? That's what the calculated gross is for. The calculated gross, SMS allows us to track our spoilage and all the other things that we can track, and puts them in a totalizer as well. So now we have what our retail, what we sold it for, what the cost was. We can calculate that gross profit. We can remove out all the stuff that we adjusted our inventory with, which leaves us with a calculated gross. So if I were to go back into the grocery business and say, okay, go to the warehouse, set me up on grid 3, zone 3 pricing. So the warehouse sets me up on zone 3 pricing. I know pretty much what my distribution, my sales mix is going to be. So I calculate that out and I come out with 31.27. So I'm good, okay? My break even is 23%. Surely I can generate 23% out of that. But do I know? What are all those variables that go into reducing that going in gross so that when I come out with a gross, what do I have? So I go through my first quarter and I see that something didn't quite go right. So I had a 31.27 going in and I did my inventory and I come out with a 22.83. So I have a difference now of 8.44%. What goes into that number? How do I know what that number is? So that's what we're going to look at for the next few minutes. So SMS Markdown, here again, like I said, it's a one database design. Everything that's in the back office is available at the terminal. It's designed that way. It's beautiful. It works. It allows us to have all the information that we need when we sell the item in order to get it back and put it into reports. It is calculated at the time of sale, and the markdown is calculated in its own bucket, so we can run reports on those as well. The markdown adapts to the budgeting process very, very easily. And in fact, that's what it's designed to do. So I look and I see, okay, what are all the programs, the promotions that I'm running? Okay, so if I've got a TPR program and the warehouse bills out that TPR, then I don't need to include that. Do I want to run an in-store everyday low program? Do I want to run a hot sheet flyer that I want to distribute? My newspaper advertising, that's the heaviest markdown that we're going to incur. How much markdown should that be? Am I running a senior discount? Every one of these reduces the retail, thus takes off of that difference, increases that difference number. Do I do a loyalty program? Am I doing a giveaway program? So we have to take all of these into consideration. Once we have all those into consideration, then we can get a sheet that looks something similar to this. This is our budget. This is what we want to see. I'm going to plan my work so I can work my plan. So we have going across the top real quickly, going in gross, add markdown, prep loss, throw away, other, and to come out with a net, and then we have our contribution to profit. So as you can see in the summary, the store gross is 3127. We've got to add markdown of 359 with other 2.3. So our projected coming out gross is 2536. Okay? So, how do I make this transform into a front end that will work, and that when I get to the bottom of it, at the end of the period, I get those numbers? Now, one thing else I did too, I don't know if this thing works or not. Store break even. When we were faced with Walmart Supercenter coming in on top of us, I had a company come in and do some consulting with our store to try to get ready for Walmart. And one of the things that they said was, do you add your profit into your budget? And I said, no, I'm an independent. It's just whatever's left over is what I get to keep. If nothing's left over, then I'm kind of screwed. He said, well, if you go ahead and plan your profit and put it in there, then when you get to the end, you'll have money. I said, oh, what a brilliant idea. So that's what that's for. So as we move through here, then we see that our over-under gives us 0.26, but our profit's already calculated there. So how do we use that? How do we use that budget? How do we put that budget into practice, if you will? So in the, in the ad promotion, this is your basic. Already? Oh my goodness. Okay, we got to speed up here. Very quickly, what I have done, this is your forecasting cube, and I have added in markdown so that when we put our batch in and we can do the forecasting on our batch, it'll tell us what our markdown is. Then we can check it against our budget and make sure that we're within budget, and if we do that for the period, then we should come out with our numbers. It's all about controlling the variables that go into your ads. SMS has the ad markdown reports, so we can run those reports at the end, but it's all about budgeting. It's all about seeing and controlling all of those variables. By the same token, the price modeling. We can get into category management, so to speak, and once we get all of that, all of our items categorized, the warehouse usually has those listed so we can import those, and it's just a simple running a report, addition, looking at your categories. Same thing as your ad markdown. It's all about controlling those everyday low programs. Are you satisfied with what the warehouse is offering? We can come in here and based on a little formula, determine the percentage of the allowance to the base and see which one's the best. And if you do your calculations, you say, well, that's not right, but I've got ad allowances in here too. So we can create a batch. We can scroll down this list, pick out the items we want, throw them in a batch, run a projection on that, see what our profitability is going to be, see what our ad markdown is going to be. Does it fit within our budget? There you go. We can create our own everyday low program with that method. The 80-20 rule, 80% of your sales come from 20% of your items. With forecasting, with everything that we've got, it's very easy to monitor those. Those are the items. They're very easy to monitor. There's only about 200, 250 of them. You can monitor those easily. And then tweak those retails out where you can get more, where the market can bear that, then you can do that. Okay, so this one right here is real near and dear to my heart. My daddy said if you're going to run a store, you got to know how to run the meat department, so he put me in the butcher shop for 2 years to learn that trade. So, independents live and die by the perishable department, just the way it is. It's the one thing that we can do that competes with the chains. The chains put it out there in backpacks, and it kind of looks okay, and it kind of doesn't. But we have our own butchers. We cut the meat, make it look good. So, how do we do that? Performance indicators. There are certain things that owners want to see out of their departments. Obviously, sales is pretty important. We've got to have our sales there. But your butcher, and then the ad sales. Sales mix, we live and die by sales mix. You have owners talking, what's your meat gross? What's your meat percentage? Well, it's 21, 22, 23, so forth and so on. So we want to know what that sales mix number is. Costing, we get the cost in from the warehouse, we get the cost in from our vendors, so we plug all those costs in. Now, I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Gross profit, yep, we set our gross. We set our gross. We look at our contribution to profit, which is really sales mix times gross. It gives us a number that we can work with much better. We look at our markdown. Here again, back to that budgeting process. We see what our markdown is going to be. And we look at our shrink. So these are the things, when I was in the business, that I wanted to know every week. How do we do that? Well, when we're in fierce competition with a chain or with another independent, we can't wait until 13 weeks later to look at our performance. It just, we could lose the whole thing by that time. So, what are we doing then? We take these numbers and we look at them and we generate a report that lets us effectively manage our department. Now, this is going to look like a whole lot of data, but for those of you who know what these numbers are, you're going to go, ooh, that's cool. So this is a performance indicator report. You got your store sales, department sales, your sales mix, your cost of goods listed here because we are tracking the cost when we sell the product. So we know what it cost when we sold it. All right, so we've got our selling gross, which is basic math. We know what we sold it for. We know what we bought it for. Basic math, right? Then we've got our selling gross percent. And then our contribution to profit. A lot of people don't look at that, but I do. I like it. So, but here's the other thing. The going in gross. We know what the regular retail is on it. That's in SMS. That's price field 30, right? So a simple calculation, we can show what our going in gross is, and then we know what the markdown is. SMS is calculating markdown. So we've got all of that. If we're scanning out all of our shrink items, I bundle all those together in one column to show you what the shrink is. And then we can come out with our calculated gross, 3181. Now, the beauty of this report is that it allows you to see, and this one right here is done by month. You can do it day, month, any of the periods. But you can look across through here and see indicators. For example, July. Our gross was $29.74. What happened? And I can tell you that owner-operators, and this is the meat department, by the way, the owner-operator goes back to the butcher and says, your gross is just 29%. Why? And invariably, the first thing he says is, well, you ran a lot of ads. It's not my fault. So how do we get around that? How do we get good information to make good decisions? Well, it's right here. We can look at it and say, okay, yeah, Your markdown was pretty heavy here, 13.3%. So if I'm monitoring the gross and I'm trying to improve the gross, okay. So if I'm monitoring the gross, trying to improve the gross, then all of these numbers here come into play. Okay? So, as I look at it, a lot of times we as owner-operators look at this number here, the calculated gross. And that's how we make our decisions. But if I'm trying to improve the gross of the profit of the department, then I want to look at the going-in gross. I can see my trends better in the going-in gross, right? Because it stays flat. It's not affected by, or not really impacted by your ads. So I've got my indicators here. Low monthly gross, by the same token, I can look at that, look across that line and see where that gross was affected. And I gotta go through some of these pretty quick. All right, I got a minute to go through this. This is your standard cutting test. Head butcher comes in, does this cutting test. So what we've been able to do is to take all of those subprimal cuts, retail cuts, group them back together into the primal, box beef, and we do that by warehouse order code, and that will give me cost, give me profit, and it will also give me the yield. I take that report, which looks very similar to this report, and I can see how well my butcher's cutting. Okay, so I see the yield coming out of that. Then I got my markdown and stuff like that. So to do that very quickly, look up my order code, go in our SNS maintenance screen, send a new batch, do a forecast, and then we can project our sales. So this particular chuck, this box chuck, generating 40.78. We make some changes, do another generation, and we can up it to 41.64. This concept also, come on up. This concept also works in produce, works with integrating the warehouse stuff, scale interface, which helps out a great deal, and then all the data is in one program. So, got through it. Thank you.
For those that don't get an opportunity, I don't know if it's an opportunity or just one of those things that you got to go through in life, to talk in front of big, large groups of people. Alan did a heck of a job. I congratulate him. He's a great guy to talk with. I encourage you. He's around for the next couple days. Talk with him. He's not mean. You know, he kind of looks like Shrek, but he's a great guy. So just go talk with him. Learn from him. He's a